Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to my program, Real Talk. I hope you found the first part of the program interesting and useful. In the second part of the program, my guest Mohammed, who's here all the way from Cumbria, who's been living there and working there for a very long time, who's also very actively involved in helping Muslims to understand and enjoy the beauty of the countryside, not just in Cumbria, but throughout the country as well. And he helps a lot of Muslim groups of men and women, brothers and sisters, who want to go out there and experience the countryside, help them understand how they need to interact with the countryside in a safe way. I know in the first part we talked about mainly water, because we've had some tragedies of mainly young people who lost their lives going into the water. Understandably, on a very hot day, everybody would like to cool down and jump into the water thinking that it's going to cool them down, but not realizing that the water is quite deceptive, and it has unfortunately taken its toll on families as well. Some families have lost more than one person in their family to these tragedies of jumping into the water as well. And then we started talking about the countryside in general. And before we went on the break, we talked about the environment. And as I say, in the environment that we find ourselves in the countryside, not only in this part of the world. I mean, when I went to Pakistan, quite by accident, I found the countryside over there was absolutely amazing and so beautiful that I couldn't believe what I was seeing. But do we as Muslims understand our role and responsibilities when we go and visit these places, and how we treat those areas that Allah has provided us for our own benefit? It provides us with this calm environment within which we can sit down and focus and be one-to-one with Allah, one-to-one with Allah's nature, and reflect on ourselves as to what we are as human beings and what our role is in the global environment and the global system. And Muhammad has been telling me that nowadays, because more and more young Muslim men and women are now experiencing the joys of the countryside, that this has become something that the marketing teams and businesses have now capitalized on. Muhammad, you're saying that there's waterproof hijabs, waterproof niqabs. So you are seeing that the sisters who are practicing Muslims are also going out. Yep. So is rambling, walking, and enjoying the beauty of the countryside, are they?
Yeah, and the countryside open to everybody, whether you're Muslim woman, Muslim man, or child,
or non-Muslim,
non-Muslim.
Yep.
Doesn't matter who you are. It's open to everybody. And clothing and gear is an element of it. Is when you go out, you don't know what the weather's going to be like. So it's making sure you have the right footwear, right clothing, so you don't get wet, or if it's too hot, you keep cool. And there is now clothing around which allows you to go out and make sure you stay safe. Doesn't matter what the weather is. So it's always thinking about that and encouraging people to go out and not be afraid of going out because they think, I haven't got the right shoes. Some walks don't need any special shoes because it's very low level and it's a very good footpath. Even if you're old or frail, you can do that. Or even if you've got a pushchair or a pram, you can go out for a walk with a pushchair or a pram. Or even a wheelchair.
The footpaths are suitable for that.
Footpaths are made, and so for example in the Lake District, in the Yorkshire Dales, in the Peak District, there's things called miles without stiles, which are very specific routes made up. Some of them short, some of them are long, which are suitable for people with pushchairs, wheelchairs, where they don't have to climb over stiles or go through gates or stuff, which makes it accessible for a whole range of different people.
Right.
So that means that if you have a child, then you can go out in a pushchair. If you have somebody, an old family member, father, mother, grandparent, then again they can go out with their walking stick or in a wheelchair and still enjoy it. On some places they even rent out a mobility scooter. So you can hire a mobility scooter and go out on a trail with that. So they're really making the countryside accessible for all different people, all different communities, all different abilities, so they can come and enjoy it from their perspective, rather than, right, you have to go and climb that mountain. Yes, if you want to climb the mountain, you can climb the mountain, but you can also just walk around a lake.
And how important do you find that is to people's mental well-being?
It's very
apart
important.
from physical well-being.
Yeah.
Obviously, all the walks. I mean, before I got my injury on my Achilles tendon, I was in Masjid al-Aqsa, and every day I was walking 18 to 19,000 steps a day. Sometimes 16,000 steps a day. And now I can't do more than 500 steps a day. Inshallah, Allah, with your du'as, I'll soon recover fully, and it should be
Good.
maybe not back to 15,000 steps a day, but slowly build it up.
Yeah.
How important do you think it is for people to go out there for their mental well-being?
I think it's very important. I think to get out of your home environment or built-up environment and just go out into nature, as you said earlier on, it's a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in terms of that beauty, the lakes, the mountains, the trees. Go and enjoy them. Go and reflect and be at peace and do zikr, meditate, or whatever you want to do. But go and sort of just sit by the water for half an hour and just sort of think about. And it also takes away sort of, you might have pressures at work, you might be doing a very stressful job, you might have other things going on in life. To be away somewhere where you may not even be disturbed. There are places you can go in, anywhere in the countryside you go, there'll be places where you will see nobody. We're going on a retreat this coming weekend, 15, 20 people. Now, we've been there a number of times, and I've walked in that valley, and every time I've walked, 4 or 5 hour walk, I've never seen more than half a dozen people. So we're going to be sat there all weekend. There's a lake there, there's a river, there's mountains all around you. We're just going to reflect and chill out for a weekend and just enjoy the beauty. And I think.
And are there specific? Are there any not specific? Are there Muslim groups, retreats that you're aware of that happens on a regular basis for young people, both men and women?
There are. So, for example, there's an organisation that does called Muslim Family Adventures, and they just bring families together. And you can do whatever you like. You can do activities, or you can sit, you can go for a walk, you can just it brings people together. They organise some group activities for children and stuff. Other times they might have just sort of study circles or whatever else. But it's about sort of getting people out, families out. Right through summer holidays, they've been doing activities in different places. Lake District, North Wales, Devon, whole range of places. They just book a place, everybody books on, they all come together, do whatever.
So how would people, if they're interested in it, how would they access them?
Just search different activities, and I'm happy.
Are there any sort of Muslim specific websites where
there isn't specific websites, specific generic websites, but there are lots of different groups who have their own Instagram and Facebook and their own websites, but there's nothing that all brings them together. But
so if you wanted to ask Mufti Google about Muslim
and you'll find something. You'll find something. So there's Wanderless Women, Muslim Hikers.
Wanderless Women?
Yeah, Wanderless Women.
That sounds a bit interesting.
Muslim Hikers.
I'm sure they know where they're wandering to.
There's Four Seasons, Z's. So there's a whole range, A&J hiking group. There's a whole range of Ashton hiking group, and then there's Cramblers.
Yes.
So there's a whole range. If you want to contact,
let me show one of the videos to my audience about the people who enjoy the countryside. We're going to show you some of the activities that goes on, and I'm sure you'll find it fascinating and enjoyable as well.
Be adventure smart when heading to the hills to ensure you have a great day. Always ask yourself 3 questions before you set off. Number 1, am I confident I have the knowledge and skills for the day?
If the weather or ground conditions are beyond our capabilities or equipment, we'll choose a more suitable route or turn back. I'm flexible, allowing enough time for the least able member of my group. When I'm doing something new or going somewhere new, I'll go with qualified guide or sign up for some training.
Number 2, do I know what the weather will be like? Before I set off, I always check the latest weather and ground conditions for our destination, including the highest point, and only attempt a route if the conditions are within our capabilities.
Number 3, do I have the right gear? I always make sure my mobile phone is charged, but in remote areas, I know I can't rely on it for navigation or communication. A map and compass is the best way of knowing where you are and where you're going.
I wear walking boots and pack layers and waterproofs, even if the forecast is good. If you find someone in trouble, don't put yourself at risk. In an emergency, call 999 for help. If it's inland, ask for the police and then mountain rescue. If it's inland waters, ask for the fire and rescue service. And if it's sea and coastal, ask for the Coast Guard.
But there's some really, really basic stuff that you can do to make sure it's safe.
Be adventure smart when heading to the hills to ensure you have a great
Fascinating video. I can actually see one or two of my friends on there as well. I think Mohammed was at the back of that. But I mean, obviously, you had this big rucksack or whatever it is. It seems like you have to carry quite a bit of gear with you. But I know one of my friends who goes out there, just takes a thermos and a couple of bars of chocolates or some energy bars, and he enjoys himself at all. So I hope you found that fascinating. I mean, that looked really interesting. I mean, for somebody like me, it would be quite challenging, especially with my Achilles tendon damage that I've done. But I suppose that, like you say, there'll be easier routes as well. And are they sort of led by an experienced leader?
Yeah.
So, they will know if anything happens, what to do.
Yeah.
As it says in an emergency, ring 999.
Yeah. So that I was leading that group. I had two other people helping me as well.
Right.
And the reason we have the bigger rucksack is because we're leading the group. We make sure we have, for example,
So you
spare
don't expect
clothes.
everybody to carry a big rucksack
No,
like that?
not everybody, no.
All right, thank
But
goodness for that.
leaders normally will carry a full bag with any sort of emergency first aid kit and warm clothes and so on. But that was in middle of January early this year.
Right.
We did this in the Lake District at the bottom of Helvellyn.
Well, it must be brave to go out in January.
Yeah.
Because January is not the best time of the year to go out in.
But alhamdulillah, as you saw there, we had beautiful weather for the weekend, and you saw that big rainbow. That was just a blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to sort of, as you were walking up, this sort of rainbow came out.
That must be a beautiful sight.
It was a beautiful sight. You can see sort of people were posing for photos with it. But for us, it was about sort of getting the group to understand how the weather conditions change, what to do, when not to go, how to navigate. And just experience the outdoors in different conditions as well, because it's about thinking about it, and it's not always going to be sunny, it's not always going to be wet, it's going to be in between sometimes. It might be a bit cold, it might be a bit warm, it might be too hot, it might be too cold. But it's making sure that people are prepared for whatever weather. So as you saw, people had hats on, had waterproofs on, because that's the weather condition we were walking in. There were times when we've gone out over the last 6-12 months where it's been nice and warm, where you just can walk in a t-shirt. So it's about being prepared, knowing where you're going and what the temperature is going to be. And as you get higher up, it gets colder as well. So it's recognizing that it could be beautiful down here, but then suddenly sort of you go 200 or 300 meters and it suddenly becomes windy. So check the weather forecast before you go, so you know what's going on. And if you dress appropriately, you're going to be totally safe outside. And
this is where I presume your briefing at the beginning would help people. But for somebody who's never been there, suddenly decides one morning, I'm going to go to the Lake District, no leadership there, what are the important things that you should be... I mean, say tomorrow morning I wake up and say, right, let me go to Yorkshire Dales, I'm going to go for a walk. What are some of the key things that I should take with me? Apart from a mobile phone, I presume, fully charged.
Yeah, mobile phone, waterproof.
Right.
Some basic waterproof. And normally in waterproof, I always say, don't go out and buy an expensive one. You can go to Aldi, Lidl or Trespass or somewhere. Just make sure the inside the seams have tape on it.
Right.
So they have normally a tape seam on it. That means that if it sort of rains through the seam, the water won't actually filter through, so you won't get wet.
Achha.
And that's reasonable for low-level walking.
Right.
A good pair of walking shoes or trainers. Doesn't have to be walking boots. Good sturdy shoes. That's, again, some people may want boots because they want to support their ankles. Some people are happy with trainers. It depends on where I'm walking, what I wear, whether I wear ankle-sized boots or I just wear walking shoes or trainers. If it's something I know very well and I know what the route is, I'll just wear trainers. I'm happy with that. Some packed lunch. And water. Keep yourself hydrated. Because when you're walking, particularly if it's warm, you need water, at least a couple of litres of water.
Right.
So you know you're not going to...
What's the average length that people sort of walk time in terms of time? And
tell you what, when you look at the research that agencies do, most people don't go more than a couple of 100 meters from their car.
You're joking?
No.
A couple of 100 meters?
Because they park up, they go to the lakeside, they go into the forest, the picnic table, or go for a short walk. So it very much varies. But from a walk, so from here, if you're going to the Yorkshire Dales, Malham would be a good place to go. It's very busy, but you've got potentially 3 or 4 different walks. You can do a walk for an hour, you can do a walk for a couple of hours, or you can do a walk for 3 hours. You choose which one you want to do. based on your ability, based on what time it is and how long it's going to take. 3 walks, maximum 3 hours. If you take your time, enjoy a picnic and some photos, then it may be 3.5, 4 hours. I did a walk with a group a couple of years ago where we took 4.5 hours because we weren't just walking, we were talking along the way. We had a picnic. They stopped and took photos and chatted and things. So it took us a while to get round. So it's about sort of looking at your own ability and knowing your own ability is how far you can go. And look at the weather as well. If it's wet, then think about how far you want to go.
I mean, before Ramadan, and when the weather was good, we used to go out on a Sunday afternoon for a walk for at least a couple of hours. But just one thing that Mohammed mentioned, that is photos. And I know a number of occasions or instances where people have taken or tried to take photos in locations where they've not really understood the safety issue. And there have been some tragedies there. In fact, there was one yesterday somewhere on the south coast where a young man sort of stood there at the edge of a cliff, and I think slipped and fell quite a distance. Luckily, he survived, but is badly injured. So we need to be very careful about. And I know young people want to sort of take a pouting selfie, as I call it, which I find fascinating. But just be careful if you go out there, in taking photos as well. I mean, Mohammed, it's been fascinating talking to you and learning more and more about it. If our viewers or their children want to join any of these groups in your part of the world, is there any particular route that they can use?
If they want, you can find me on Mosaic Outdoors, on Mosaic Outdoors, right, on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter. So just sort of look me up and ask those questions, and I'll point you in the direction of where the groups are and who you can go to for those sort of walks. But also sort of beyond walking, there are other things as well. There are a lot of mainstream organisation groups who do things as well. If people want to sort of look at tree planting or conservation work, again, get in touch and we'll look at what we can do in those sort of areas. So don't sort of think it's just about walking. There's lots of other things you can help out. Even locally, there's wildlife trusts, and you might want to connect with those sort of organisations, and they have green areas and things where you can take your kids and yourself to go and do. So there's lots of different opportunities, very much local as well. So don't always think that you have to go outside. You can do things within Bradford, within West Yorkshire, within 5-10 miles from where you are.
I mean, just going around Lister Park, for example.
Exactly.
It's quite fascinating itself.
Yeah.
As I say, I mean, where I live, we have some really nice parks. I remember when I first came to this country in the sort of mid-60s, and I went to this Batley Park, and it brought back memories of Africa because of the trees and the jungle, and it was just unbelievable. And I still love it at the moment as well. But I mean, as I say, thank you very much, Mohammed, for coming.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts and your guidance. I hope you found that very interesting. The most important point that I would like to make is 2 things. Go out there and enjoy the countryside. We have been blessed by Allah with a countryside that we have, in not far away from ourselves. And that is something that I think helps people both in terms of their physical well-being as well as their mental well-being. And I think we need to recognize some of the creations of Allah and how blessed we are. Because every time, you go and see a tree or a bird, it should remind us of how fortunate we are in the majesty of Allah's creation. And the second most important point I'd like to make is that as Muslims, we have a huge responsibility and duty to care for our environment. So by all means, go out there and enjoy the environment that we find ourselves with and around on our doorstep. But please, 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 show that you're a Muslim in the real sense and that you care for the environment and you'll worry about the well-being of the environment. And that, as Muhammad says, what you take with you, and nothing's stopping you from taking lots of stuff with you, but you don't dump it there and leave it for somebody else, for the animals to die on, choke on, etc., that you bring it back and dispose of it in the best possible way you can. Because one day, we're all going to die, and Allah will be asking us these questions. He's not going to ask us just about our namaz and our roses and our zakat. He's going to be asking us about what did you do in the world that I created and how did you look after it. and how did you respond to its needs. So please be careful. Hope you have enjoyed the program. Inshallah, I'll be back with you soon. Take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May Allah be with you and protect you.